So we've done a whole bunch of different things with our videos, I guess, over the last couple of years. And one of the things people have responded to really well has been when we tell stories. And we got to knocking around here, I guess, at the end of duck season this year. And Dylan and I were talking about what should be chapter 6. And we made a trip back in end of October that was not the greatest amount of killing footage and whatnot, but man, it just made for a hell of a story. And I guess the story starts back in, I don't know, we decided that we were going to go up to Canada around Halloween. So we left Tennessee around the 26th or 27th of October, drove 1,800 miles straight through. And when we got to Canada, some of our buddies had been there maybe, I don't know, a week before we got there. And they were shooting them good. So got to within 3 or 4 hours of them, and we had the choice to make whether we were just going to push on through and go straight to where they were and hunt, whether we were going to go get settled into the house and scout the next morning. And we decided that based on what they'd been seeing, there were so many ducks around and geese around that we just dive in with them and hunt for the last hour or hour and a half of daylight and start our scouting the next day. So we did that. And it was good. We killed some ducks. The next morning they had a goose feed lined up, so we did that. And so I wouldn't say we got greedy, but we definitely operated outside of the norm of what we would typically do. And that was good. I mean, we killed some ducks, we killed some geese, but the weather was changing when we showed up. And so after we shot those ducks and we shot those geese, I mean, a really hard freeze set in. And by hard freeze, I mean 40-mile-an-hour winds, 15, 18 degrees. And so we scouted an evening, and then we scouted the next morning. And by lunchtime the following morning, we'd now scouted for, I don't know, 5 hours the day before, 5, 6 hours the next morning. And I probably hadn't seen 10 ducks, maybe one little group of snow geese. And I had driven 400 or more miles. Several others of us had too. So we all got back to the house, got talking about what the world was going on. And Dylan and I had agreed when we planned this trip back in the summertime that if worst case scenario, we get froze out. And if we got froze out, that we'd just pick our stuff up, we'd head south and try to get below the freeze line. And so we all, I guess we kind of took a vote around and everybody agreed. Nobody disagreed or was against it. So we packed up as fast as we could. We pointed the truck south and started trying to get below the freeze line. Well, we left Saskatchewan Sunday. We've been on the road literally for 2 days. We're somewhere in the middle of North Dakota, and we found some dark geese to hunt for this morning. Trying to make lemonade out of lemons. It's crazy. I guess middle of that afternoon, we'd been on the road at that point 3 days, a little over 1,000 miles back towards home, and we found a spot where a bunch of ducks had kept some water open. And just beside that field, maybe, not even half a mile, maybe 600 yards or 800 yards, where they were clearly feeding. And it was just constant. We'd seen them that morning, but it wasn't just a ton, but it was just a trickle. It was just a steady traffic back and forth. And about 1 o'clock that afternoon, we bumped some ducks out of there as we were coming by. And so we thought, well, we'll get some lunch, and if we can get permission on the spot, then we'll shoot them this afternoon. And sure enough, we got permission. So we were pretty optimistic. We went back in there maybe 2 o'clock, 2:30, right after we had eaten lunch. And man, they were still in there and still just kind of trading back and forth from the field to the water. Not just in monster wads, but just, 10s and 20s, but steady, back and forth and back and forth. And it was pretty obvious that those ducks were keeping that water open and they were feeding that field, and they were just trading back and forth. And so with all the adversity that we'd faced at that point, I mean, we're 4+ days into a week and a half long trip. And we hadn't killed enough to matter at that point. We just decided, well, why don't we just give them a shot this afternoon? And as we're setting up, I mean, there's ducks just coming in steady, and shot them pretty quick. It was over before 4 o'clock. And man, I've definitely shot bigger numbers, bigger piles, bigger volleys, bigger everything. But I'm not sure that I ever shot a limit of ducks that was quite as satisfying as that group right there, because, I mean, after driving for what felt like 2.5 days to get up there to the western part of Saskatchewan, and then just getting completely shut down, scouting the whole day without seeing any ducks or geese to speak of, then bailing out and packing everything up and driving south and trying to get below the freeze line. After all of that, to shoot a limit of ducks, that was it's pretty fantastic, to be honest.
Wow. That's nuts, boys. Crazy. I've ever worked so hard for limited ducks. Nobody worked so hard on different barrels for a million miles. Dude, I have no words. I mean, I've killed lots bigger piles before. Holy cow. We literally, like, we picked up and drove 1,000 miles to get here. Had no clue where we were going, just literally came to Smackville. Gosh. Good stuff, boys. Spencer, how far did we drive to get these? Well over 1,000. I mean, no doubt 2 cars over 1,000. Lots of pills. I told Blake when we got in the car and we left Kindersley, every time I pack the truck for a trip like this, I think, what's the worst case scenario and what would we do if it was the worst case scenario, and we never have to pull worst case scenario. This was totally worst case scenario. We pulled it off.
One more.
And I guess from there, we settled into an area, and it wasn't really below the freeze line like we'd intended. Everything was still frozen around there, but there was enough stuff that was left open, some deeper and bigger water that the ducks and geese were kept open, that we were able to kind of keep picking at them. And so after we shot those ducks, the next day we were on a pretty good feed of lessers, and then it snowed, and we shot those lessers pretty hard in that snow. A bunch of snow geese in that field. and then we shot some more geese and some more ducks, and things just started to click. And man, as I look back, you know, the numbers don't add up on that trip. We didn't shoot 1,000 birds like everybody would probably like to in a 7-8 day stretch. But we did some quality shooting, and we overcame some gigantic odds and fought through some frustration, and we just really enjoyed being together and all that kind of worked together. And I'll never forget there right at the end of the trip, it was snowing, and we'd shot a bunch of geese and a few ducks. And I told Dylan, I said, put that camera on the tripod, and let's all get in here together, let's take a picture without any birds. Because I want to one day be able to remember on this trip that we got to day 8 or day 9, whatever it was, after a bazillion miles and a bazillion odds and flat tires and broken down trucks and stuck vehicles and every other possible thing that you can imagine go wrong. 6 guys here. We're still being nice to each other. Nobody hates each other. No fist fights, no cussing matches. Everybody's still getting along. And that's a trip that the 6 of us will never forget. And it won't be because we killed a bazillion every single time we shot our limit every time. It'll be because we picked up and we did what we didn't really want to do, but we knew was the right thing to do. And we got back down there and we found where they were at, found enough to hunt, and we shot our ducks, shot our geese.
Let these land. Here we go. This is the one right here.
Certainly sometimes it's the killing that you remember, and sometimes it's something else, but on this particular one, it'll be a combination of the killing. But man, I mean, there's a verse in Proverbs that my dad always quotes, and I'll never forget. It says, "A thing accomplished is sweet to the soul." And when we rolled into that hotel room in North Dakota at midnight after driving all the way to Canada and packing up, driving all the way back to North Dakota, I remember thinking if we could just shoot one limit, if we could just get it done one time, it would validate that we made the right decision, that we picked up our stuff and moved. And it did. I mean, that's what we remember, is how sweet that was. And I don't know, there's just not really any better way to say it than thing accomplished really is sweet to the soul.
Get him. Shot. Nothing like a little triple. Hold on, that white one's still. Here, you got her. Ooh, right in the throat.
I seen that wide coming around the truck. We couldn't even see y'all down here in the snow.
Them 6 squared up, 5 of them lit.
Really?
And so we shot the Carson shot the adult. It didn't come on in, and he shot the adult, and the other 5 got up, and I killed 3 on the left, and Kurt killed the 2 on the right. Dry Education 2019.